our February Love Talk. I got Shellisa in the house. I'm so excited to have her join today. Each month we come with a brand new topic for the First Wives Club. And this month is in sickness and in health. And I love that smile that's on Shellisa's face. It is a testimony of her faithfulness, her commitment, her endurance to be right alongside her husband through their journey that ended on a very good note for them. That doesn't mean it was easy.
That's right.
Days, and they've had some difficult experiences that I know some people are experiencing themselves. And so when they had victory for a sustainable amount of time, and I was looking for topics, I was like, oh my God, I gotta get Shellisa on to talk about their journey. So before we jump into it, tell us a little bit about you and Tim. Tell us how you met, your love story.
Okay, so yeah, that's the name of our wedding video too. So Tim and I have been together, it'll be 14 years, married in May 5th, Cinco de Mayo.
Okay.
And we actually met online. So it was just totally random. He sent me an email, he found my picture on this radio site, and so he sent me a message and told me, that was pretty. He was right, and so so we exchanged a couple of emails and talked over the phone, and then we went on a date about a month later, and then we became a couple, and 6 months later we were married. So it was really fast.
That was very fast. And it was very fast, and it wasn't just yesterday. How long have you guys been married?
Almost 14 years.
That's fantastic.
So, yes. So very quick. It's been really good. So we got married in May, and maybe that was forever ago. Since then, we have a blended family, so I'll tell you about that. We have a total of 4 children. We have 3 girls and a boy. So I have my son. He had his 2 girls, and then we had a baby girl. She's 12 now. So, so we have a blended family, beautiful family. It's been a great journey. It's been a lot. I think for us, well, I'm sure we'll get into this. When we got married, I was thinking, okay, this is great. You had a kidney transplant before. You take a lot of medicine. That's cool. You're healthy. We were going to be good. So I really did not anticipate having to kind of go through all of that all over again together, but we did, and we made it. So I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But in short, that's it.
That is fantastic. So those of you who are considering online dating, I hear that so often, that there are these victory stories in it, and 14 years later, you guys were at the beginning of that whole online scene. It wasn't really as prevalent as it is now.
Yeah, it wasn't like no swipe left or anything like that. It was really random. She's cute, let me send her. Oh, he's handsome. That was it. So it just happened to work out.
Yeah, so I'm sure we have some wives who are just like you, who met their husbands that way, and they're wondering, oh my God, can this work? You guys are making it happen. So one of the things that stuck out to me as we were corresponding back and forth, it was like really early on in your marriage. Now, Tim had a transplant before, but it was early on in your marriage that it began to, have some issues.
Yes, absolutely. We so we had been married for maybe, I don't even know if it was 2 months, and he had regular doctor's appointments. And so we went to the doctor's appointment, and the nephrologist was like, well, your kidney function is declining. And I remember he was a really young doctor. So he was very matter of fact. And I think, I remember that day because I had on one of the outfits from my honeymoon. I remember that day specifically. And so he was just like, yeah, your kidney function is declining. You're probably going to need another kidney. And it was just like, okay. But wait, we just got married. So it was just very strange to hear, but he wasn't fit either. So he wouldn't begin dialysis probably for a little over, probably almost 2 years. It was just declining. We were having other things starting to happen, but it really didn't go all the way out. But that concern came right away when we got married. So that became very quickly a part of our marriage and our plan to kind of okay, we're going to have to deal with this,
Yeah. Yeah. And so, not to make it about us, because as wives, we always make it about us, but to make it about us and your role in that, hearing those words that, something's not going right with your mate and with his health. You talked about that initial impression, but like, what are some of the feelings, like the real feelings that you deal with early on, right? Because you guys, just to kind of play it back, you were a couple months into your marriage, which is now 14 years later, right?
Yes.
And so a couple months into the marriage and into like year 13, 14 is when he finally got the transplant again. And to your point, it was during that whole time that you've endured this and that you remain faithful and prayerful and all those other things, which we'll talk about because I know that's all critical to your journey. But that initial onset, like, what did you feel? What did you have to work through?
I think for me, I was very hopeful at the beginning because I thought he had a transplant before. So like, okay, so this will be like that. You had a transplant, he had to wait maybe I think 18 months or so. I'm like, okay, cool. So whenever you get started, we're going to do it together. We've always had a very positive, kind of first disposition outlook, whatever. It felt like God was going to do it for us whenever he was going to do it. Dialysis wasn't scary to me because my mom had been on dialysis before. His mom had a short stint on dialysis. So it was just kind of like, okay, this is nothing I haven't seen before. We'll be fine. And so that kind of naivety, I guess, was good for me because I did not have, I didn't have any space to be really scared. I just was very hopeful that it was going to work out. I didn't have any reason to believe differently. And we really thought early on it was going to go by quickly. I think over time, we always felt like God was going to do it. It just became a matter of when and when and when. And so the more time went by and we had more medical challenges, I think for me, that's when I just kind of felt like, okay, I know you're going to do it, but for real, like when? Because it was just that anxiety building up. So I really never had a negative thing like, oh my God, I'm going to lose time, anything like that early on. It just felt like, this is going to be in God's timing. We got this. I kind of know what to expect. So we're just going to go for it. And that was really my, how I felt about things for years up front. So, yeah.
Yeah, because in your journey, you had a testimony of it happening very quickly, right? 18 months, like it's a quick turnaround. And so that kind of does set the bar for you, right? Yes. And I'm sure we all do that, right? We're all like, okay, I'm committed and willing to give it this matter of time.
Right. Yes.
And you're like, okay, I could deal with months, I could deal with, and then when it becomes years and you have to stand beside your husband and really watch him experience pain and suffering and really watch him have to endure things that impact him really as a person and in his ability to love you, to serve you, to protect you, to provide for you, that it has to just over time continue to take you to places where if you didn't have a healthy perspective to reconnect to hope, like where you started. And it's interesting that it's not naivety. I mean, I think that was a blessing and gift to you because it was something that you were able to go back to. Tell us about when days became months and months became years and how you really created a system to really steady and balance yourself on that 13 plus year journey.
Yes. So I think we had a lot of different care plans. So we did first dialysis at home, which was something that you needed a partner for. So he had a built-in partner. And so I think the first thing that was after those first couple of years of kind of waiting to have to begin dialysis was getting prepared for dialysis and what that felt like. And it felt a lot scarier just because surgery was involved and, it was something new. Dialysis at home has a very high infection threat or risk. And so I was kind of nervous about that. And home dialysis, the treatment that he did had boxes and boxes like about this big all over your house. You needed almost 2 of them every time you did a treatment. So our bedroom turned into like a storage place to keep all of the equipment and keep everything clean and sanitized. And, that I think probably we did that for like the first 4 years, maybe 4 or 5 years. And, we had a couple of instances of infection and that was really scary because it's critical. Like you have to go to the hospital. It's out of your hands, and so I think kind of going through those experiences again, kind of were scary, but I still was like, no, it's going to work out. We're just waiting a little longer than we thought. And so by now we're talking about 5 years,
Oh, wow.
He switched to in-center dialysis because he was just kind of getting the dialysis that we were doing wasn't working as well. So then that was a change too. So then going in-center 3 days a week for dialysis, even though he didn't necessarily want to do that, that was the best thing for him and he felt a lot better. So I think at that point for me, I'm like, okay, well, this kind of gives us a little bit more time to keep working with. So I'm always thinking about kind of his condition and how healthy he was for transplant, because that was always my goal. And I think I just never, I didn't really internalize a lot of things for myself because I just felt like, I got to do this. Like I got to make it work. We had kids, especially when my kids were small, they needed me to do stuff. We were trying to work, trying to do everything. And we dealt with job loss for me, for him. I mean, other things that, just regular life brings. And so we went through a lot. And so it was like the kidney was just something we were waiting on, but we went through so many other things. We really didn't have a lot of time to worry about the kidney. It was like, we need you to be as healthy as possible so that when that kidney comes, we'll be fine. And, I'll tell you one of the scariest things for me, it was 2011, I got laid off from my job. And so my security at that time was my job had sent me a letter sharing that his transplant would be paid for in full.
Oh, nice.
And so I was like, okay, great. And so the day I got laid off, I didn't hear anything that my manager was telling me other than we're letting you go. And I couldn't process anything. So do you have any questions? My only question was what happens to my health insurance? Because I had that letter. And I was concerned about what would happen because I knew, like, for transplant, you can't get a transplant without 2 forms of insurance. Just all of this kind of, all these rules and things. And so that was probably my initial panic. Out of all those years, it was being told that I'm, would no longer have this insurance to take care of my husband without it being, super expensive. But, that happened in 2011. And like I said, Tim got sick here and there. We had different things that pop up with that are natural for dialysis patients. But for me, really, it was just like, I got to make this happen. The stress of joblessness, needing money for this, money for that, all of those things were so much more stressful than my husband, because it was just like, I'm just going to make sure you're okay. Like, we just got to make sure everything's okay. And that was kind of my mindset. I think that that was definitely challenging because I think I was kind of missing some things for me, like health-wise, not necessarily paying as much attention to me, just kind of pouring out and not making sure that I had what I needed to take care of myself, because I was so focused on making sure he was okay, making sure our house was okay, but it was definitely, it became more stressful, but it was never about him and his health, because I never wanted him to feel like, it was not about that. It was just managing his health, because I knew that the kidney was coming. I just didn't know when. And we had been scared to death from nurses talking about patients who got turned away, at the time when kidneys came. So I was determined that he would be healthy enough to get it whenever it came.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so what's really interesting is a couple things that you touched on there that I want to unpack. One was the self-care, right? And, you know, my aunt is a caregiver for my grandfather and had been for a very long time. And so I just know from observing her experience what kind of toll it can take. And for you had family, right? You were a blossoming family. You guys had children, as you mentioned, and so you had to keep going with life. And I'm sure that during that journey, there were times where you could recognize you were not as focused on yourself as you should. And so if you could talk back to Shellisa, you know, 8 years ago, and someone who is facing that, what kind of advice would you give to the caregiver that you feel like you might have neglected for yourself?
Absolutely. I think that you definitely have to keep looking at yourself in the mirror. Like I think there were some points where I was going through the motions. I was working so hard, trying to keep everything afloat, where I frankly was not looking in the mirror. And so for me, it was gaining weight and gaining more weight and not feeling like myself, really. I think I just felt like I'm just taking care of everybody else. I'm doing what needs to be done. I'm managing the house. I'm managing whatever. And I was not looking at me. So if I look back at the pictures of myself, I'm like, how did I not see that? How did I not pick up on that? You know, I got much, much heavier very, very fast. And when I think, particularly when my son graduated from 8th grade, we took graduation pictures. And then when I went back and looked at those pictures, I was just like,
who is that?
Who is that? Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
And I thought I was cute that day. And again, you know, like
you were cute that day, girl.
Yeah, I was cute, just not how I thought I was.
Right.
And so when I saw that, I was just like, oh, wait a minute, no, we can't do this, because this is not how I see myself. Right. And so I would recommend that people look at you, look at yourself in the mirror, evaluate if you look and feel how you want. You know, if I think about how if I would have been paying attention to how hard I was breathing going up the stairs, or that the jeans kept getting bigger, and that was important to me. At some point, I just kind of didn't think about it anymore. I wasn't paying attention, you know. Luckily, I'm blessed I didn't have any issues with, you know, blood pressure or anything like that. So I didn't have any of some of the more normal things people will talk about. But for me, I didn't look how I needed to look. So I think looking at yourself, see yourself for who you are. Maintain your relationships. You need to maintain those. For me, friendships mean a lot. I do a lot of community work, and I will say that's one thing that I think helped me, because I had an outlet. I had something just for me to do, not Savannah's mom, not Jameson's mom, not Tim's wife, but something for Shellisa to do. And that was very good for me, because it gave me a circle of support for when I just needed, you know, somebody to see me and, you know me, or laugh with me, or, you know, just it was just helpful to have those relationships. I think that's also super critical. And then I think just finding whatever your you know, in terms of your faith, whatever that is, work that in your favor too, you know. So I'm not uber, you know, spiritual. I know like 10 scriptures, judge me if you want, but you know, the ones I do know,
wear them out.
Keep it together for me.
That's right. I'm wear them out.
So, yeah, get you a critical few and use those.
That's all you need.
To help you. Yeah, you know, and so I think that was very important for me too. So that would be my little tidbits. And then treat yourself, even if you don't have a lot. Do something that you like to do every now and again. If it's getting your eyebrows done, spend that $10, $12. You know, whatever it is that makes you feel like a woman, that makes you feel beautiful. Do something that you really enjoy, because you need that, even when times are desperate, even when you don't have a lot, even when you're tired. Those small things give you a little bit more oomph to keep going.
Yeah, that's real good. Really good, great advice. I know for me, and you probably experienced this more so, but when you see your husband dealing with a situation that seems uncontrollable by him, you see it bring out weaknesses in him that he probably has trouble dealing with too, just because they like to have that symbol semblance of control. And so I can only imagine in that situation, watching your husband not want to take on desperate perspectives or desperate measures and feeling that way. What do you do to help him to still feel reassured in the marriage, reassured in his manhood, you know, that he can still be the man that you're looking for and you desire when he feels compromised, you know, because he's in a very fragile, vulnerable state at that point, and his concerns are all the things you mentioned too, and then some, because if for him, he feels as though life is on the line. Like, how do you still make him feel like you my dude, you know?
Yeah, we so I think it's interesting because I've seen you know, marriages sometimes seem to fall apart on much less, right? But one thing that we've always had intact was our relationship. I think one of the challenges for me and him was communication, because I saw that he wasn't feeling good. I would try to cover whatever was going on, and I didn't necessarily communicate if something was wrong or if I needed something or if we were coming up short, you know, somewhere. I did not want to upset him, so I would try to like just manage it myself, and that wasn't good because it put extra pressure on me, and what he felt like was I was trying to do everything and not communicating with him. And so what I think we learned is that he still wanted to be a part of the decision-making process. He still wanted to be upset, scared, frustrated, whatever I was feeling. He wanted to have those feelings too. He did not expect for me to shoulder that. And so I think he had to just had a lot of those feelings, because I am very much, I'm going to handle it. I'm going to figure it out. And I had to learn that I don't have to figure it out. So still letting him be that husband in the relationship and letting him get in on what's going on with me, on what's going on with us in our house, and keeping him still as the head of the house. It has nothing to do with how much or how little you work or how, you know, or anything like that. It has to do with just your placement in the home, and that still giving him that seat, you know, and honoring him that way, I think was a big deal. I think I could have done a better job sometimes, because I definitely was, I just didn't want to bother him. I just didn't want him to have to worry about anything. So I think I could have definitely done a better job to even come to him sooner and tell him more things. But I think that was a big thing for him, just making sure that he still maintained his place in our home as the head of our family. I think when he was getting much sicker, and you know, it got, you know, we had lots of days where he would come home and get into bed, and that's it for the day. And so we had you know, some difficult times where I just felt like, well, what about me? You know, because there at some points were very little romance. Romance wasn't on the top of the list because it just wasn't on the list. Like we trying to live, literally. So, but we still had to have those conversations, because it was like, okay, well, this may look a little different for us, but how do we still spice it up? And that was where I had to be more vocal and say, I still require a date night. And it might be going to get ice cream cone, but we need to do something for us, you know. And I still want to feel like you desire me. And so you may not feel like it, but I need you to hug me. I need you to tell me you love me. You know, things like that. Be more verbal with me in those ways. And so I still had to be I had to learn how to talk about how I was feeling, because I don't even think I noticed it at first. And then after a while, I was like, okay, is something wrong? Are we okay? You know, and it was because we had spent too much time not connected, because we were just managing his illness. And so I think just really that communication piece, and then also making sure we were very intentional about you know, taking care of us as a couple was very important, and taking that time away. So
that's awesome, Shellisa. Very, very, very good stuff. You know, the other thing that I know had to be an emotion you dealt with through the journey is dealing with the fear, right? You know, even when it came down to actually getting that transplant and realizing, okay, my boo is going to be in there for 20 hours or however many hours it was, you know, dealing with the fear that comes along with this journey, again, because it's very critical in nature. It's not like we can't pay our power bill. You know, it's really about life. And so how did you really deal with the fear that came along?
So we were ready for that. We had probably the scariest time that we had was the week before transplant. I know it just so happened that was a God moment. You were actually a big part of that day or that night. So I think after that hospitalization, we were just talking the other day. The doctor that we had that night was very sincere in her approach with us and the way that she spoke to us. Her name is Dr. Belizaire. I still remember. She was so thoughtful about our experience and it gave us so much peace that after that hospitalization, we really just had a peace that was like, you know what, we just gonna do life. And so when we got the call for transplant, if you're not familiar with transplant, like they call you and then you may need to get up and get in the car right then, or it may be a couple of days depending on the situation. We got the call 3 days after our last hospitalization. So he had gone through a lot. We had a great day and all of a sudden transplant calls. It was the 4th of July. So it was excitement. Like, oh my God, it's our time. And like I was sharing before, we never felt like God wasn't going to do it. We never felt like it. It just was like, when? So it was so much excitement, but you also don't know if you're going to get the kidney. So you kind of have to keep living like everything is normal until you get the word. And even when you get to the hospital, you can still get sent home. And that happened to us once before too. So it's not, and that was a terrible experience. I will tell you, I definitely empathize if anybody has ever gone for a transplant and then been turned away. Now, you want to talk about like a disappointment like no other. That was painful. That was painful. Yeah, so there was that. But this one, we just had a hope that it was going to be for us. And the whole process, it was just so peaceful. And the care team was so kind. And his transplant took like 6 hours. It was overnight. So I slept like in the lobby. And I remember the surgeon coming to tap me. And he explained his name is Bradley Collins at Duke University Hospital. Amazing. When I tell you that this man talked to us in such a way that any fears that I could have had about my husband, he took all of that away. He was so warm. I never had that. I never had that fear. Everything was expectation. It was hope. It's our time. It's our chance. And if he gave it to us, surely we're going to be okay. And we had lots of challenges post-transplant. Many transplant patients do. So we were back and forth on the road. Our hospital is about 2 hours from our home. So back and forth a lot, more than I ever could imagine. But it was just like, this is going to work out. I don't know how it's going to work out, but it's going to work out. And so my periods of being scared were probably more about, how do I do this? Or how do I learn how to do that? How do we manage all these medications? How do I, do things like that? How do we work this routine into our lives? It was never about him recovering or anything like that, because we just knew that this was something that was going to happen. We always knew that, but it was those other things, like how do we keep it? How do we take care of, take care of him going forward and stuff. And so that was kind of, I think, we just didn't blessed to not have that kind of fear, but definitely the care part was hard.
You know what? It is such a journey of hope. And it's amazing when I stop by now and Tim's got on his stuff from the airport and he's out on the runways doing his thing. And I'm just looking like, oh my gosh, it's such a miracle,
He is a walking miracle. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And so determined. And I think that plays a huge role in anyone's recovery of anything. And
I would just add that when you talked about like for his feelings, a big part of it was letting him be the man that he wants to be. So even when he was his sickest, he was still working somewhere part-time. Where he would go to dialysis. On the days he went to dialysis, he went to work after that. He still worked. He still did the things that made him feel like a man that were important to him. It would have been easy for me to be like, no, I don't want you to do that. You don't feel good. But I had to respect that about him because he wanted to participate in taking care of his family. And that was very important. I feel like that was critical to him being encouraged by being able to continue to do that. And so I just want to put that in there because my husband is very simplistic in what makes him happy. He wants to take care of his family. He wants to spend time with his family. He wants to be able to walk in and have a Miller Lite, and rest and get up and do it all again the next day. And so that's a part of him. So he needed that.
That is awesome. So we're going to wrap up with just 2 quick things. So the first is the 3 tips you would give to someone who's standing in your shoes, who is, facing alongside their mate in sickness, and really on that journey to health. What would you want to remind them? 3 things.
First thing I'll tell you that comes to mind is something we heard in church, and I kept that in my heart, is that you got to believe that God can do it. Believe that he can do it. And whether or not he does it or not, you have to believe that he can. It's that belief, I think, that will help carry you through those rough times, because you're not sure what God is going to do. None of us are, but you have to believe that he can. And I think that he honors that. So I would say that I think get very connected and get close to each other. The best thing that you could do is to really nurture your relationship, because if your relationship is strained, then everything else is just that much worse. At least if you guys are on the same page, if you're working, working together, if you're loving each other, everything else is secondary, and you'll tackle it all together. But if you're not together, then it makes it that much harder to manage everything else. And then, as I was sharing earlier, you have to make time for yourself, for your own self-care, because my mother would say, what happens if you get sick? Then everything fall apart. And so you have to make sure that you are in a good place, and that you're doing everything that you can do. It may not be perfect, but everything that you can do to make sure that you are in a good place emotionally, physically, mentally, everything that, goes into that. You really have to commit to that, because, you can't pour from an empty cup. So, I would think those 3 things, I think.
That's fabulous. Can't pour from an empty cup. That's really good. All right. And just in true First Wives Club fashion, what's your wife tip? What's your best wife tip?
Let me think about that. I would say, oh my gosh. I feel like this sounds funny, but I would just be a jewel in his crown.
All right now.
Whatever that means for you, we had this funny instance. I told my mom the other day, where I was doing my own hair for a while, something crazy. If y'all good at it, keep doing it. But I wasn't. And so Tim was like trying to find a way to tell me that it wasn't really working out, And I was like, okay, well, I'll get my hair done. And me doing that for myself, I think has done a lot for myself. Confidence, my self-esteem, taking care of myself, making sure that I'm doing the things that I like to do. I have to fund those habits, but I do those things for myself. Be good, be the jewel in his crown, so that everywhere he goes. We had a conversation the other day, and Tim was like, well, her hair is always gonna be done. She always ready, And I think he likes that,
That's and right. So he knows what he likes. He's like, I want my hair laid.
Exactly. You gotta be there. I think that how he looks at you the day you get married, that when he asks you to be his wife, all those things, that's what he dreams of. That's, to me, I think that's still what he sees. And so I always try to make sure that I'm thoughtful about that.
Yeah, I think Chuck sees the same thing. I think Chuck sees the same thing, Shellisa. That's why he be buying me clothes too small. He still be seeing
he
still be seeing me like I was at wedding day. All right. Well, I have enjoyed myself with you. I love you so much, and thank you for being so willing to share your story. And I'm so encouraged, because our faith is in God, and we know, like you said, we got to believe he can, and he showed up strong on y'all behalf. And like you said, Tim is a walking, he is out on that runway, running, jumping, guiding, pushing out, just like he hasn't been through anything. And so
he's my hero.
That is a great testimony. So thank you for making yourself available, and I appreciate you.
Anytime. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.